I think the best way to answer the question of who's responsible is to say it depends. Because I think that you really have to look at your company and where your organization is at with diversity and inclusion before you can really figure out whose responsibility is. Because if you're in a toxic environment or an unsafe environment for people of color or for women or for LGBTQ or for people who are disabled, they can't be the ones that are starting that fight and to go towards inclusion and go towards equality in that organization. And so it's people who have the power and who can make the decisions. And so, if there's an issue with race within an organization, I, as the white person, have to be the one to stand up and say this is wrong, because I have to help be the voice, because I'm not going to lose anything if I speak up. And in other situations, if you're a woman and you're reporting sexual harassment, you might have blowback to that, and you might have consequences to that. Or if you're a person of color and you report racism, you might have more consequences for that than I would as a white person. And I think it's a really easy thing to do. There was one organization that I worked in, and I didn't think that people of color were being paid fairly. I didn't know that for sure, but just from the conversations that I heard, I didn't feel like it. And so I went up to one of my colleagues who was at the same level in the organization that I was, had basically the same job as I did, and I told her how much money I made. I didn't ask her what she made. She was an African-American woman, and she used that information to be able to negotiate a salary. And she later told me that I was making $5,000 more than her. Wow. And she had 10 years more of experience than I did in the field. And it was just simple of like breaking that taboo of telling your salary requirements. And it wasn't hard for me to do. Yeah. And I think that we can see those things that we can all do on all different levels of diversity to really make that happen in an environment.
Yeah, to your point, it's really important to note that it's not the responsibility of the marginalized people to make these huge attempts at leaps and bounds in diversity and inclusion, right? They do need to be at the table, though. That's where the responsibility of the company comes in. They've got to bring those voices there so that they can understand what the issues are, right? Don't tell me what I need, ask me what I need. And that's how we'll get to a better space, right? So it's really important that from the top down, this is happening. It has to be part of the brand architecture of the company, of the product, of the organization. That makes it authentic. And when it's authentic, then people really can absorb it, can understand what it is for themselves, and then they can spread that out into the world. And that's really what we want to happen, right?
Right. And on that note, I think it's really important to understand that it really does have to come from the top down in the organization or company. And that means from upper management to middle management on down. And you want to incorporate it and weave it into your values, your mission statements, your policies, and your guidelines for your entire environment for your company. That way the employees, when they come to work, they know they're coming into a place that values diversity. And that may change their behavior, definitely will change their behavior. Even if they leave work and they go to communities or families where it's not as much of value as it should be, when they come to work, it will be reflected in their behavior because they know the people who they work for have it as a value. So that will sort of make them understand that this is something that they need to take seriously, and that will flow through the entire company.
Part of that too is having it pervade through every aspect of your organization and the work that you do, the job descriptions that you put out, that you clearly articulate that there is an expectation of inclusion and diversity. That's opening and engaging for people who are from marginalized communities to know that that's an expectation from their coworkers, but it's also the expectation of those from the majority community to realize this is what's going to be expected of me. And it's done when you're doing the interviews. Those values are communicated. It's done when evaluations occur. So it is very invasive throughout, or pervasive throughout the whole organization, that there is an expectation of how people will interact with each other, but it's right from the get-go, from the job description to the interview to evaluation and onward.
I agree.